This is what you can do about taking control of your own health, a podcast for people interested in learning how to create bodies that are healthy, strong, fit, and disease resistant, as well as in exploring why we get sick. I am Sean McClendon, your host. I'm a certified personal trainer, author, and health and fitness enthusiast. Thank you for joining me. In today's episode, I want to talk about how we've been taught to be confused about health. But before we get into that, the featured book for this podcast is my book called 8 Weeks to Transform Your Diet and Your Health. You can have the best exercise routine in the world, but if your diet is off, one thing is guaranteed: you will not see results. In 8 weeks to transform your diet and your health, I've created an easy to follow set of eating habits for you to adopt over 8 weeks to boost your health, promote fat loss, and get the most out of your exercise regimen. So when you finish this workbook, you will finally know how to eat to get results. Make sure you look below this podcast in the description for the link where you can buy a copy of 8 Weeks to Transform Your Diet and Your Health. All right. Um, the information on this podcast is based on personal research and opinion, and is not meant to be a substitute for advice from a doctor or physician. So you are advised to consult your doctor or physician before making any changes to your lifestyle. All right. So let's talk about how we've been confused, how we've been taught to be confused about our health. I'm sorry for bumping my microphone there. So there was a post when I get on the like an internet browser on my computer here. They have those news things. It's like Firefox, which is the browser that I use. They have these news things that they post, these news articles, and I try not to really look at that stuff a whole lot because it's distracting. Being an entrepreneur, I don't necessarily have time for all that, and then also I tend to avoid news because most news is bad and it doesn't really feed your spirit. But anyhow, there was a news post that caught my eye last week, I want to say, and it's on getpocket.com. And the title of the article, and I'll try to make sure that I post this in my description below, so look for it. But the title of the article is "What Were We Thinking? The Top 10 Most Dangerous Ads." And I'm just going to scroll through here and kind of like mention and brief some of the different things that the author of this article talked about, to kind of illustrate the point I want to make with this podcast. All right, so one of the things, they have this headline that says "Junk food now fortified with vitamins and minerals." So basically, here what they're talking about is, let me scroll down. Like there's this picture of probably like a 1940s, 1950s ish advertisement for, quote, vitamin donuts, and also Ovaltine, and it's just kind of this is kind of just talking about these various uh processed foods, which back in the day began to be fortified, and you've probably heard that word before, fortified with vitamins. So somehow, again, like a donut becomes healthy because you put vitamins in it, or cereal. That's a big one. Like they said, Ovaltine, other powdered drinks, and all kind of other stuff. And so people were touting the health benefits of processed foods, and chocolate milk, and sports drinks and things like that. And we know that that's just not true. So really, it doesn't really matter if you put synthetic vitamins in a junk food; it's still junk. And while vitamins in and of themselves are good for us, it's not like this is the kind of stuff that contributed to us kind of having like this kind of band-aid mentality that as long as I kind of get some vitamins in, then I'm okay. But it's just simply not true. That you can just add vitamins and then everything's okay. It's not true. So that's one of the things I saw here. The other one is, let's see. Okay, so Well, I'll skip over that one because it's not necessarily nutritional. 7 Up is for babies, so apparently, 7 Up used to be. I don't even know if 7 Up exists anymore. But for those of you who don't know, it's a soda. That's kind of sort of like Sprite, and apparently 7 Up was touted as something to kind of help babies to get strong and fit some kind of way. I don't know. I guess apparently they would add it to milk and make it a delicious blended food drink. It says mothers know that this is a wholesome combination. The addition of 7 Up gives milk a new flavor appeal that especially pleases children. It's just horrendous, man. Adding soda to milk. So like, no. We all know soda is totally devoid of nutrition. All it is really like carbonated sugar water with tons and tons of sugar, sometimes with colorings and stuff like that. And then if you get a diet soda, artificial sweetener, it has no benefit and it's very, very harmful. So, but these are the things that, we were told, that this stuff was good for babies. Cigarettes. Apparently there, ads. And I remember when I was a kid, whenever there was still like some cartoon ads for cigarettes and things, or ads like the Marlboro Man, this rugged man who's like the definition of masculinity, so to speak. And, and all these things, they kind of like finally got phased out because of government regulations saying that this stuff was influencing kids to smoke. But back in the day, in the 50s, people used to say that that smoking had no adverse effects. And this was even apparently whenever it was long known that smoking could cause cancer, and stuff like that. So yeah, so smoking was considered like not, or we were told rather, that smoking was not harmful. And I'm getting somewhere. So let's see what else this has to say. Okay, that's not really. These aren't really related. Okay. Yeah. So apparently also at some point, red meat was touted to like help people stay trim. Eating a lot of red meat, and again, red meat is important to note. So I personally don't have an issue with meat. I do think that all of us will probably stand to not eat as much as we do, as much as we're encouraged to. But I don't necessarily have an issue with it. But it is very true that especially red meat in particular is harder for your body. It takes longer for your body to digest, so you don't want to eat it as much. And then the other thing is processed meat. Processed meat is not something that you want to eat much at all either. You want to like limit your intake of processed meat because processed meat is high in sodium nitrite, and just that can be carcinogenic, which means possibly cancer causing in higher quantities. And yeah, but apparently red meat, processed meats were touted to help people to stay trim. Okay. And so the list just goes on and on and on. Here's something else that says that people who were making sugary products back in like the 60s were telling people that sugar, like this says, sugar's quick energy can be the willpower you need to eat less. Like sugar as an appetite curbing substance, or appetite suppressant, so to speak, to help you not eat as much. And that is absolutely not true. Sugar is, of course, very addictive. Sugar makes you want more sugar. It's empty calories that jacks up your insulin. It makes you gain a lot of fat and can, destroy your body, to be quite honest. And it's also not necessarily, it's one of those things that all of us are addicted to, but it's almost like an allowable drug if we're honest. But so people used to say that sugar help you eat less. Absolutely ridiculous. Okay, let's see what else. Um, okay, I'll skip those two. But then I thought about a couple of my own. So milk. So when I was coming up, milk was something that was very much promoted. And I still remember being in grade school when there was this big milk campaign where they would have all these celebrities that would have like a milk mustache. And when I was growing up, and I think it's still the same today, because my kids tell me, the drink with your lunch was milk. you know. And even when I think about it now, I'm like, why milk? How does milk even go with meals like that? But milk will build your bones. Milk is high in calcium, and milk has all these vitamins and minerals and everything. Note, a lot of that is fortified. Um, but this is something that apparently really started to happen like around the 40s and stuff like that. And come to find out, a lot of this is because of like government subsidies. Um, Government subsidizing milk, dairy production, and the thing is, most of the world, 65% of the world's population is actually lactose intolerant. Now, I'm not gonna say I never drink. And I don't. We don't buy gallons of milk. We typically use milk. Um, we typically use milk in recipes that we might do from time to time, and then we add a little bit of milk as like for cream, like organic milk for cream in coffee and whatnot. But even that, sometimes I just don't do that. I try to find like a good plant-based alternative because I don't necessarily feel the best about doing a whole lot of that, even though it's not much. But just drinking cartons of milk and buying milk by the gallon and whatnot. Milk is a highly acidic type of thing. Most of us outgrow milk after the infant years because we're used to drinking milk as babies because that's pretty much all we can consume naturally. But milk is not by any means like our health food or whatever. Milk is not necessarily something that we're really supposed to be consuming like that. It's linked with various diseases, linked with cancers, linked with heart disease, and so on and so forth. Digestive problems. So, but we were told to drink this stuff by the gallon. And then two more things I want to mention. Juice. A lot of times we've been kind of like with the 100% juices and whatnot. Now, don't get me wrong. I like juice. I don't drink it a lot though. But we've been led to believe that as long as we're drinking 100% juice, then we're good, and we're not, because juice is, it being out of the plants, it is full of sugar. It jacks up your blood sugar. It wouldn't do that if you consume the juice in the plant where it belongs, but it jacks up your blood sugar, contributes to obesity. And I've had to try to convince people of this, but people are still, like, man, but it's 100% though, because it's kind of hard for people to get past that. It's 100%, so I'm good. That's the confusion I'm talking about. And the final thing I want to mention is the food pyramid. Back when I was growing up in the 90s and 2000s, the food pyramid, it had like the food group that you should eat from the most is the grains, pastas and all that type of stuff, 6 to 11 servings a day. If I'm not mistaken, I should have looked at it before I record this podcast, but if I'm not mistaken, one slice of bread is considered one serving of grains. One slice of bread. So think about that. 6 to 11 slices of bread a day. And this is very confusing, and it's led to, I believe, the obesity and overweight epidemic we have in our society, as well as issues with diabetes and high blood pressure and all this stuff, because we still have this fixation on grains when some people can't tolerate grains like that in actuality. Two, because grains are so high energy, they're not necessarily, the average person doesn't necessarily is not necessarily active enough to consume nearly that much grains every single day. So, but this is something that has led to all of these things, I'll put it this way, have led to the confusion that we have about what it actually means to be healthy, to live healthy, to make healthy choices, all of this kind of stuff. because of the power of advertisement, because of authorities in place who were telling us these things that it turns out weren't right. Sometimes they didn't know they didn't necessarily know, and sometimes they did know, but didn't tell us the truth. So that's just the truth here. That's just the truth, you know. So yeah, if you didn't know, for example, that you shouldn't be eating all that bread, or that milk is actually not really the healthiest thing. And I even saw articles say, a more recent article saying that milk may not actually be necessary. And for it to even talk about it like that, it's like, of course it's not necessary. Absolutely not necessary. Why did I decide to go through an article in this podcast and kind of talk about this stuff like this? I did this because it is so important for you as the owner of a body to be self-educated. I'm not saying that every source out there is a good source, but what I am saying is that you need to be self-educated, and understand health for yourself. Do your own research. If it's a product or something like that, for the most part, anything that comes in a bag or a box or whatever like that you can pick up in the aisle of a grocery store is not going to be nearly as good for you as something that's more close to its natural state, meaning just plain fruits and vegetables, meats, the stuff that you find around the perimeter, with the exception of dairy, which, like I said, I do consume a little bit of dairy, but I try not to consume a whole lot of it. And there have been times that I don't consume any at all, and I may actually go back to that, but that's why I limit it. But yeah, like, there'll never be a product that is superior to something in its more natural state. And you got to know that. You have to know that. You have to know and understand these types of things for yourself, and understand that there is no man-made substance, fortified vitamin substance that's going to be superior to what God already put out here. It's just not going to be. It's just not going to be. And that's my personal opinion. And I believe I personally believe that that's just fact. I believe that. So be educated. Don't just take somebody's word for it or label, and I didn't even get into all the different labels on products that talk about low fat and no fat and no sugar and reduced fat, all of these things, gluten-free, all these things that we assume, oh man, it's healthy then. Non-GMO, which I tend to avoid GMOs for sure, and that's a whole nother topic. But sometimes if we see that, then we kind of make it, because we're so confused about what healthy really means, we attach all kind of other things to that label, that topic. But in case you didn't know, the Food and Drug Administration here in the United States actually has very specific definitions for those different type of things that people put on the labels of foods. Very specific definitions that allow people, if a food company meets these criteria, they can put that on their label. Like, for example, the whole trans fat thing. Back in the day, probably about 10 years ago, I want to say, all these companies started to get rid of trans fats in their products, Oreos and donuts and all this kind of stuff that typically had trans fats. Trans fat being a hydrogenated fat that is a hydrogenated fat that is put inside of a product to stabilize the product to have a longer shelf life. But it's discovered that those fats are very hard to remove out of the blood, the arteries. So they lay down deposits in the arteries and can contribute to heart disease, heart attacks, all that type of stuff, strokes and everything. But anyway, I'm saying all that to say the definition of zero trans fat with the Food and Drug Administration is not really zero trans fat. It's really, like, I think below a half a gram. So that means that there's probably still trans fat in some of these packaged pastries and things that say zero trans fat now. If you see hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oil on the back, it's still, that's trans fat, period. They just now might mix it with other fat so it's not as much. So they can put 0 grams of trans fats on their label. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. That's where our confusion comes from. Where we feel like we're doing good eating some of the junk that we're eating, and we're just not doing good. Be informed. Do your research. And if anything, make sure you're eating as natural as you can too. Because if you're preparing your food and you're preparing it with raw ingredients, like I say, vegetables, fruits, lean meats, stuff like that, then you're already doing way better than the large majority of the American population, because most of us think that these products are healthy and they're just not. They're actually very destructive to our health. So anyway, I could go, there's a few different rabbit trails that I could go down based on what I've talked about here, but I won't, because I want this to be kind of a broad thing, just to kind of like put some, food for thought in your head to consider that what is advertised to us as healthy is not necessarily, and a lot of times it is indeed the opposite. All right, so hopefully this is helpful for you. Make sure you share this episode. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast, like this this episode. Make sure you get your copy of my book, 8 Weeks to Transform Your Diet and Your Health. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Remember, your doctor's not responsible for your health. You are. God bless you.